piracy, which was around 1640 to 1780, over that period of time. That's when you had all those characters like Blackbeard and Captain Morgan, you know, and Jack Rackham and all those fellas, Captain Kidd. And so Hollywood, you know, really glorified that particular time. But piracy actually did begin way before the birth of Jesus Christ. Way back, the BC years, you know. Not British Columbia, but the BC years. And yeah, there was a lot of trade going on, like around the Mediterranean and over in Asia and so on. And even here, you know, when towns started up like Shelburne and Liverpool and that, there were lots of trade going on. Whether it was fish or lumber or whatever, or sometimes rum, lots of rum runners around here. And we'll get into that later on. And so, yeah, so a lot of this trade happened. And when you've got trade like that happening, and you've got a lot of the bad fellas that say, oh, well, I'm going to go out on the ocean and I'm going to steal some of that cargo, you know, and make some money. And a lot of fellas did. Somebody's killing the parrots over there.
Somebody's cooking the parrot again.
Even somebody like Captain Barse over here, you know, Lane's privateer, and that was his house. And he had the Liverpool packet, which during the War of 1812 captured over 50 American ships. Fascinating story. And he was in business with a fellow by the name of Enos Collins, who owned a bank called Collins Bank in Halifax. And if you put your back to the wall of the old Morse's Tea building, and you look down the promenade that's under construction now, but of historic properties, and you see at about 11 o'clock, there's a concrete jam header in that it's all bricked in now, but it says bank at the top, and that's where Enos Collins had his bank. And he made a ton of money partnering and financing Captain Barse over here. So if you go over there and have a drink at the bar, you'll see Captain Barse, Joseph Barse. His picture's right behind the bar, well, a painting of him behind the bar. And they became very wealthy. At one time, Enos Collins was one of the wealthiest men in Canada at that time, before Confederation. And he married also into high society in Halifax. And where St. Mary's University was where he had his estate called Grorsbrook. So it's a very fascinating story all about that and all about here. If you go down to the Queens County Museum, you will see a replica, part of a replica of the Liverpool packet and the whole story about privateers. And we'll get into what privateers and pirates were a little later on too. So that's basically the beginning of it, and it happened in Asia and mostly the Mediterranean first, where piracy kind of started. So here we go. Here's some of the dress that they wear. As you've seen our costumes that we wear, lots of things going on. Okay. Well, hope we don't get electrocuted. My dreads will all be up on end. Anyway, so yeah, so that was how that started. Some of the dress. Now we'll get Captain DeVoe over here to stand up and show you.
Oh, that hurts.
So as you see, pirate, pretty much standard costumes. First you have the hat. That's what we call a wide brim hat. And what some of us are wearing here are tricorn hats. So why were they shaped as a tricorn? Because they found that a lot of those kind of hats went overboard in the wind. So these ones were more ergonomically, didn't think I knew big words like that, did you? I know some other ones, marmalade, crustacean. So the tricorn hat was invented so that the wind would come like this instead of catching a lot of wind and your tricorn going over the side of the ship. So that's where the tricorn hat comes from. And below that you've got the frock coat, which would be worn in the evenings and that sort of thing. And out on the town, you're entertaining the ladies when you came ashore and that kind of stuff. And then you've got underneath that, well, he's got a bandana under the hat. Yeah, and that's to keep the sweat off the brow and sometimes to keep the sun off your head as well, so you didn't get sunstroked. And then underneath, you've got the waistcoat, the baldric, that holds the sword with the scabbard that the sword goes into. So you didn't, hat first. And then underneath, he's got the waistcoat, which would be worn during the days if it was sunny and hot on board the ship on the deck. And then, of course, belts. And you've got the breeches, which at that time there were no zippers, so if you had to go quick, you had to undo everything. And then of course the boots. Oh, the sash too. Yeah, the sash. That was in case of
Yeah.
Watch
where you're going.
Did you get that, Kelly? Yeah. All right, and then he's got the sash on there. And the sash would be used, to use like a rag and that sort of thing if you're messing around with oils, different oils on board the ship to waterproof things. And then the boots. A lot of people say, well, what's the deal with the boots and the cuffs? Well, you see, as pirates would be coming ashore in their skiffs, they'd be coming up, and they'd have to hop over the side to drag the ship up, or the boat up, over the rocks. They didn't want to, damage the bottom. So they were mostly seal and whale oil that you put on their boots. And then they would bring them up over the leg like that so that they would act like hip waders when you're going in, So that's why they had cuffs on their boots most of the time. Yeah, probably. We might be some rain happening, folks. We may have to cut this short.
Huh? Not gonna happen. Well, I don't know.
We're supposed to have a roof over us, but you guys would get wet too. So the ships that they had, this one here is the Queen Anne's Revenge, you see. And anybody know who the Queen Anne's Revenge ship was? Who owned it? Who was the skipper? A fellow by the name of Edward Teach, who was known as Blackbeard. The fiercest pirate in all of Spanish Main he was. This shows you a cross-section of his ship, which sank off of South Carolina near Charleston, and they found the ship, and they're bringing up some cannons and a few things. And then you got over here, each pirate had his own flag, you see. There you go, Jack Rackham, William Kidd, Edward England, Blackbeard. Blackbeard was this one up here. And then the different types of ships that they had. Of course, in Hollywood, the Hollywood movies, you see the big square riggers and stuff like that. And what they got going on here is in China they had some of the junks, and then they had the square riggers, the brigantines. Then you've got over here what was the preferred type of ship that a pirate would use, and privateers, would be a sloop like what you've got down there in the museum showing what the Liverpool packet was, because they favored those type of ships and schooners because they were easily more maneuverable to get in around the bigger ships, so they could fire their cannons and take off their rudder so that they'd just be sitting ducks. So that was the preferred type of ship that they had. The life on board, is pretty rough. We got there's not a lot of food. We don't have any of that refrigeration, so we have to salt all our fish and our meats. And when we run out of the chickens, we have to shoot the seagulls and the crows. You ever have that stuff on a barbecue?
Crow?
Yeah.
Oh, barbecued crow.
Oh, boy, is it ever good with hot sauce. It's fantastic. And we have something that's called a hardtack, which is like an old biscuit, really hard on your teeth. That's what happened here to Captain Angus. Yeah, he eats too much of that hardtack. But we store them in a great big, like a rum barrel on board the ship. And everybody on the crew likes to dig down into the bottom of that barrel. Why? Because you remember those that used to show up in your cereal, the little weeble bugs? A little extra protein, and they get into the hardtack crackers at the bottom. So you got to get some of that.
Now what have you done? Oops. Oh, the whole thing's full now. There you go.
Oh, there we go. I'm going to show you something here that's a reproduction of a...
It stopped raining. Hold it. Set it back up again.
Yeah, of what was in the Halifax Gazette, January 12, 1779. It says, seamen and able-bodied landsmen who wish to acquire riches and honor are invited to repair on board the ship Revenge, privateer ship of war now laying in Halifax Harbor. And it goes on to say that they're heading south. They're going on a southern cruise. And they're attacking, what privateers did back then was attack the enemies of the King of England, which is what they would do. So they're all together at Mr. Proud's Tavern, and they would be given an advance of pay. to encourage them to sign up, and then off they'd go for fame and fortune and glory, all in the name of glory. You've heard the story, the song Stan Rogers wrote about Barrett's privateers. Well, that's some of it right there. And so the Pirate Gallery, like you say, you have some of that Captain Morgan there, you know, didn't always have his boot and everything up on the barrel of rum. And then you had girl pirates too, you know. Yeah, there were girl pirates.
Oh yeah.
And Bonnie.
Real hot babes, I'll tell you.
And Bonnie sitting right over there. See the couple of girls there, okay? And Bonnie and Mary Reed. Yeah, they were famous. Yeah, there's quite the stories about those two. And they were with a man by the name of Jack Rackham. The three of them were captured by the British, and they were going to be executed at Execution Dock on the Thames River. And they were discovered. How this happened, no one knows. Immaculate conception, perhaps. But they were pregnant. And so they escaped the death penalty, but they did hang Jack Rackham. I guess that was probably planned. William Kidd.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
And we got over here Jack Rackham, yep, famous guys. Edward England. And Captain Angus here is going to tell you a little bit about a pirate that was in Newfoundland that hardly anybody knows about. But he was quite the fella. One of the only ones that ever escaped the hangman's noose. Yeah.
There's a Newfoundland dog right there.
Feel
Somebody
that
bred it with a
breeze.
cow.
Oh, Peter Easton, yeah.